Myst 5 is an interesting game, and sometimes a depressing one. It was released in 2005, 12 years after Myst, by a company that thought it was going to dissipate after 5's release. In fact, they nearly did, announcing an end to all software development and letting go of most of their employees after Myst 5's release. By luck or fate, Cyan Worlds was able to secure a deal and rehire nearly everyone back. A feeling of doom and fatalism permeates the game, from the manual to the opening Atris letter to the characters and so on. Starting the game and hearing Atris talk about how his life is a failure and everyone is dead really lowers a fog of misery on things. We've set out to help him one last time to prevent the loss of his only remaining family member, Yisha. Remember her from Myst 4? Well, she's a middle-aged adult now and speaks in riddles. She wants you to get this tablet locked up inside this bubble chamber, and whatever you do, don't give it to her. That's where I'll leave the story for now. Before we get into presentation, there are a couple of things you should know. I got my copy of Myst 5 on GOG, and it runs just fine with a couple of minor issues. First, if you want to adjust the graphic quality, you need to do it in a roundabout way. You first need to set the game to windowed, and then adjust the settings. The game will restart to apply the changes, but if you do this in full screen mode, the game will reset the settings back to the default values. For some reason, it doesn't do this in windowed mode, so just restart the game and set the resolution and stuff from there. You will probably need to do this anytime you restart your computer, just a heads up. The other minor issue is that modern mice don't play well with this game. It's not uncommon for your movement to suddenly get stuck when you're trying to look around. The solution to this is to lower your DPI to something less than 1000, and lower your refresh rate to around 150 Hz. Looking around still doesn't feel great, especially with the evil mouse acceleration, but doing this will mitigate some issues. You will of course be doing a lot of looking around, and there's plenty to see. Not as much as past Myst games, unfortunately. The leap to full 3D environments came with some necessary sacrifices, which includes the amount of detail present in the environments. This lower fidelity also makes the game a fair bit easier, as interactable objects are a bit more obvious. That's not to say the game is bad looking. There is in fact some very beautiful scenery, and the second age you stopped by was downright breathtaking. However, the levels themselves feel sparse, and it's hard not to think that we stepped back from Myst 4. It does scratch the itch of early 3D games for me, so I don't mind so much, but comparisons to older titles in the series are inevitable. As for the worlds themselves, there's a healthy variety of old ruins, space tech, and beachside buildings that we've all come to know and love. The game does cheat and put you on 2 different beaches, but who's counting? The skyboxes more than make up for the lack in modeled environment detail, with a couple of dynamic ones that really stand out. I will say that the first stage you visit is pretty weak visually, and the skybox here didn't want to stick around when I looked up at it. The texture work throughout the levels is done well, with some obvious but decent looking level of detail distances. Like, if I stand back here and approach the wall, you can kinda see the wall detailing pop in and out. One very major change that I haven't mentioned are the characters. In previous titles, characters were chroma keyed or green screened into the world, which allowed for Brad Dourif to kill you in Myst 3. The difference here is that the characters are now 3D models with the exception of their faces. Those are transplants of the actors' faces as they talk, kind of like LA Noire, except 6 years earlier. This is both very cool and uncanny. I appreciate the tech, but I was a little put off at first. The movements of the models don't always align with what the actor's face is doing, which is sometimes weird but usually pretty rare. Even though it can be rather sparse at times, the worlds here are in line with the previous titles, particularly 3 and 4. Graphically, the game ranges from very memorable to a rehash of old, but still good work. It's hard to beat Spire in my mind, but Toll Delmer is pretty close. The visuals aren't the only thing that saw a reduction in scale. The soundtrack isn't as grand as previous entries, but it still brings a lot to the table. Tim Larkin composed all the music in Myst 5, and although he didn't have access to an orchestra, his work adds a sense of wonder to the ages you explore. It's a more quiet, reflective experience that lurks in the background as you solve puzzles, with some flourishes as major events happen. Pretty much all of the instruments are sampled, but the choice of instrumentation is what some might call exotic. It's a lot of unusual wind instruments and drums, with some plucked strings here and there. It kept reminding me of Pitch Black and Butcher Bay's quieter stuff, which is always a plus for my Swiss cheese brain. The music serves its purpose well, which is to immerse you in the worlds you travel to. Our entire cast has been reduced to a grand total of 3 characters, with the majority of the game occupied by only one. The person we spend the most time interacting with is played by David Ogden Stiers, with a voice familiar to basically anyone who grew up in the 90s/2000s. He does a phenomenal job playing someone who's been down the road you're on, always knowing more than you but never letting on how much.
Welcome to my age. Nolaben. When Dukni died, I fled here. From death to death.
I can't say more until we get to spoilers, but he's easily the best character in End of Ages. Isha returns as well, and the last time we saw her she was only like 8. I'm not sure how much time has passed, but it's fair to say it's been a couple of decades. In that time, she's become much more jaded and experienced, and it shows in how she speaks. Overall, I'd say that Isha's voice acting is fine, although a couple of parts were a bit too angsty for me. Atris is also back, played by Rand Miller as is tradition, but I can't really talk about his performance just yet either. His opening monologue does carry a fatalistic aura with it, but to Rand's credit, he sells it as an Atris marred by regrets. As for the Foley and creature noises and the rest of the audio, it's adequate. Nothing poked my ears during my time in Myst 5, and it blended into the background just fine. Audio work is usually thankless, but what's here sounds good. As I mentioned earlier, looking around doesn't feel terrific, but there are some new options for moving around. You actually get 3 choices, the first of which is the classic point-and-click style used in the first 2 Myst games. There's also the option to make the game control like Exile and Revelation, in which you look around by default with the right mouse button locking you in place. The new third option is the traditional mouse look with WASD controls, which is what I used during my playthrough. All these options have their positives and negatives, and none of them really have a leg up over the others. Just pick what feels good to you. The rest of the game is more of the same good old puzzle solving that we've come to expect, with a couple of twists. The first and most obvious new thing are these tablets. Essentially, you use the tablets to get to locations that you wouldn't normally be able to access. Each world you visit also has a power word of sorts that directly changes the environment. Most of the puzzles in the ages are circumstantial. The end goal is always to get the tablet to the end of the age. As a result, the levels themselves feel a little linear. They're actually numbered in the books that link you to them. This isn't necessarily a negative, and you can always go back to the worlds you've completed. It's just that there doesn't really feel like there's a good reason to do so. Even in some of the older titles, you'd have to go back to collect information to use for later, or to unlock some other thing in a different world. In End of Ages, these worlds feel entirely disconnected, except for the actual bubble they all exist in together. So what is using the tablet like? Unfortunately, the system uses something many Arx Fatalis players are familiar with: drawing. Any symbols you see, you have to draw on the tablet. The system that parses whatever you drew is somewhat forgiving, but it's not uncommon to have the system fail to recognize something you drew. Thankfully, if you draw a symbol and it works, the game will save it onto the tablet itself, so you don't have to keep drawing the same thing. In short, it's a flawed but mostly adequate system. I do think that too much of the game is built around getting the tablet from one pedestal to the next. As a consequence of this, the puzzles in this game are far simpler than examples from earlier titles. Because the puzzles are so simple, the game is also fairly short. On my first playthrough ever, it took me about 5 hours to beat. The fourth and final world is by far the trickiest one, but even it only had a couple of trouble spots. I'm not saying it'll be that short for everyone, but the combination of small, self-contained worlds and tablet-focused puzzles mean that what's left could only be so complex. Thankfully, there's nothing like the dream puzzles from 4, or the train from 1, but I wish there was a bit more of a challenge. I also miss being able to interact with various objects scattered about the worlds. There was always some little bit of lore, utterly irrelevant thing to mess around with, but none of that is here. Everything you interact with is almost always in service of the puzzles, outside of the various journals you come across. Which brings me to why we're here in the first place. Decades after the events of Myst 4, there's one more journey for us to go on to save a civilization. Past this point is spoilers, so if you want to skip those, go here. We start our story with the most depressing opening the series has had. Atris has written to us again, filled with regret and self-doubts about his work and his family.
My journey has come to an end. I have lost my home, my books, my sons. I've lost my father, my grandmother, my dear wife, Catherine. And now I fear my only daughter is gone as well. And for what? For the slimmest hope that things could be put right.
After that cheery opening, we enter a familiar place, the prison Atris was trapped in during Myst 1. Except the Myst book is thoroughly inaccessible, bound up in leather and locks. Exploring around, we realize the scope of this place, and how it's probably not long for this world. There's occasional tremors, and these weird creatures that seem to be linking away by themselves. The standout spot in this area is of course the bubbly altar, with a strange artifact locked away in the middle. Soon after, Yisha shows up, years older after we saw her last in Myst 4. She speaks in riddles now, driven by some quest involving the tablet as she calls it. Your task is simple, get the tablet. And whatever you do, don't give it to her. Okay. She sends you away to a world I'm just gonna call the Shaft, and after that we meet our second major player.
My name is Escher. It is my pleasure to meet you. I will tell you what she will not. I will help you, but she will not.
I wouldn't call him trustworthy, but he does make good on his word to help later. After he leaves, you can look around and find callbacks to the earlier titles, which is neat. As you progress along the shaft, you'll find Yisha's journals scattered about, reminiscing on past events and thinking about the future. These are riddled with riddles, and show Yisha in a fractured headspace.
I am sick of the grower. Oh yes, some believe in prophecies that predict the restoration of Denis. The fallen city of Denis would grow. There were attempts before, and there will be attempts again. They always fail.
So far, I wouldn't call Yisha trustworthy either. She harbors some doubts about her goals, and seems angry at pretty much everything. But we'll get to her. For now, we enter the first age. Well, almost. First, we have to go through Dorebo, which is a hub world of sorts. You can unlock shortcuts to go back to past realms from here, but I never once did this. The game is short enough. If I want to see a world again, I'll just start a new save. In Dorebo, Escher starts to let his mask slip, revealing a hatred for the creatures we've been seeing throughout the environment. The creatures are very important, as they have the ability to teleport on their own, as well as manipulate the environments of Ask. They're also easily confused by my attempts to draw symbols. From Dorebo, we go to the first actual age, named Tagira. It's a sparse prison age with not much to see. This, unfortunately, is a recurring theme. Most of the worlds contain a puzzle or puzzles, and not much else. Tagira is basically Tutorial Island, teaching you how to manipulate the stone tablets to your advantage, and what a symbol of power could be used for. The one real puzzle here is just build a path to get to the other side. After that, we learn that the stone tablets are actually keys to unlock the capital T tablet back in Kavir, which is the place we started in. That's it for Tagira. Moving on. I will admit, I was disappointed with the first world. As we proceed forward, Escher reveals that he doesn't have much love for the Atris family, and would really love to see Dani, or Dakni as he calls it, rebuilt. Yisha is less kind about her people.
Oh! How could this be? On their backs, this fallen empire was built. What hypocrisy. Such abuse of power, I think they even deluded themselves into believing their own lies. It pains me to the point of ill. It makes me pleased that they are dead.
We come across the second age, and it leaves quite an impression. We left Tutorial Island behind on a spacecraft. There's not a ton here to interact with, but the second age Toldelmer jumped way up to my top 5 list of favorite Myst ages. This list also includes Spire, Tomana, Mechanical, and Jananan, in no particular order. The challenge is raised a bit on Toldelmer, with a giant red herring in the form of this stone monolith. Keen-eyed players and viewers will recognize the markings as part of the base 5 number system you discover in Riven, but they're utterly worthless here, as there's no way in Myst 5 to determine what number is what. As far as I know, the monolith is just a fancy timer. But why would the time matter, you might ask? Well, we need it to get to the keep's location. The keep is that bubble we saw in Kavir, the one with the big boy tablet. On Toldelmer, there's no obvious location for it. After messing with some telescopes in the passage of time like we're the Prince, the location is revealed to be in the ring surrounding the planet of our binary system. I've gotta gush about this for a second. The environment is so unique here, at least to the Myst series, and since I haven't talked about Halo yet, it reminded me a lot of when you step out of the life pod and take in the grand scale of everything. Even the rivers way out in the distance feel similar. I fear this level sets the standard impossibly high for the next 2 ages, which are both islands. We return to the shaft, getting to a point where we need to do a bit more to progress. Escher continues with you and laments further about the downfall of his civilization, while Yisha continues to think that they're all scumbags. It's cool to read her journals and see her perspective on our past adventures, getting some of that I was there dopamine. It's also a little bittersweet, knowing what would almost happen to the company responsible for the adventures we've been on. Pressing forward, we enter island number 1. Escher calls it Nolabin, which is where he fled to during the downfall of the Dani civilization. We learn the most about Escher's state of mind here, as well as his past actions. Here's where I should probably mention how the journal system works in this game. It's similar to Myst 4 with a couple of changes. The most obvious change is that you can't just take normal photos anymore. Whenever you take a picture of something, that photo becomes a save slot. You can still take notes on whatever page your photo is on, but the text is just a little awful to read. I think the changes made were for the worse, but they're not the end of the world. I bring this system up now because it wasn't until now that I actually needed to use the journal as a journal. It's not a system that you'll see much use out of. The puzzle here is probably the most complex individual one out of the game, and it felt real good beating it. Todelmer had a couple of spots that stumped me for a bit, but those were more general and less focused like this building puzzle. Solving it lets you access Escher's lab, where he reveals that he had to experiment on the Barrow creatures in order to escape into the waves. The other ages.
It is safe here. They are afraid. They will not come here. The snake binds them, prevents them from linking. I take no pleasure in what they have endured here. But I had to learn.
It's at this point that I stopped trusting him entirely, at least regarding his motives for helping me. So more exploring around gets you to his sketches, where we learn an important hidden symbol, the snake. It scares the Barrow and causes them to make a sad noise when they look at the tablet. More importantly, it prevents the Barrow from moving your tablet. If you walk away from the tablets with no symbol or a poorly drawn symbol on them, they'll simply take it back to the starting pedestal. The snake keeps it in place until you're ready to use it. It also lets us get past this light lock into the third keep area, where Escher awaits. Escher reveals an alternate option instead of giving the tablet to Yisha. Take it instead to Myst. Escher claims that Yisha won't go there, and that the tablet will be safe from her. But come on now. Escher can teleport at will, and as far as we know, the only way off the island left with Atris. It smells of an obvious trap, but we'll play along for now. Returning to the shaft, one of Yisha's final journals tells us that the tablet is bound to the Barrow themselves, and that whoever controls it controls the creatures. Now Escher's plans are obvious, but a choice on what to do with the tablet still exists. Time for the final age. Lakian is another island world, built to house games of sport, not unlike the Roman Colosseum. Escher raves some more about the Dani, but then I start to notice the area getting brighter. At first I thought this age was just a nighttime world, but then I noticed the moon and the sun. The age has an eclipse every few minutes, and I'm once again wowed. If the environments aren't impressive, you have to admit they're at least dynamic. The puzzles here range from doable to wondering if I'm breaking the game by doing this. For the most part, the puzzles are more or less detached from each other, but getting past this elevator had me wondering if I was doing it right. Basically, you have to abandon the tablet and get the Barrow to press this button, which raises you up. As soon as the plate isn't depressed, the elevator recedes. The only way I could get it to give me enough time was to use one of the secret symbols hidden in Yisha's journals. It might be possible with the snake symbol, but I couldn't get it to work. Soon after, we run into Escher again, and he tirades about how much he hates outsiders and blah 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 he's going to betray us. Once we get to the final keep bubble, past a clever puzzle I might add, Escher tells us one last time what he wants us to do.
I will be blunt. For it is my last opportunity. Duchni's last opportunity. Her mind has changed. Now, she believes she must have the tablet. She believes she is the grower. When you see her, she will beckon for it. Do not give it to her. But the book in Kavir, I have unlocked it. Bring the tablet there, to Myst Island. Yisha will not follow.
Don't give the tablet to Yisha and take it to Myst Island for safekeeping. Using the final lock takes us to Kavir, the crossroads of destiny. Here you have a few options. Please make sure you save before choosing anything, as the game doesn't autosave, and you'll have to go as far back as your last save was. The first option is to give up the tablet to the beckoning Yisha. Yisha and Escher were right to warn you, as the tablet will simply vanish and Yisha will just walk away, with the same face the entire time. If you decide to listen to Escher, you'll go to a dilapidated Myst, which is really rather depressing to see. Everything is broken, and it feels like a place ruined by turmoil and despair. Handing the tablet over to Escher results in him super obviously betraying us, but not before gifting us the island of Myst.
Oh, yes. Thank you, idiot. You performed well enough. So, I give you this wonderful island. Consider it a missed opportunity.
What a kind man. Real kind. The final, less obvious option is right under our nose. In fact, we've been doing it all game. Just drop the tablet and walk away. Doing so allows the Barrow to free themselves from burden, and in turn frees Yisha from hers. We're then taken to meet an old friend.
Oh, my father.
My desert bird.
I can't say that I enjoy the nasally old man voice that Rand Miller puts on, but it's nice to see him one final time. We've been taken to Rayleigh Shawn, the age we saved in Myst 3, where Atreus plans to live out the rest of his days with his daughter. There's just one final matter.
You've released the slaves as masters! You've turned the small to great!
Silence! You are no longer subject to the great. You have become great yourselves. Do with him as you should to the least, for I am no longer worthy to give counsel to you.
No, no!
Well, that was unnerving. After watching Escher get taken to the island of perpetual tickling, we're thanked by Atreus and Yisha, and are lifted into the sky to see everything Atreus has worked for. End of the road. Myst 5 was never going to be anyone's first choice as the best Myst game, except perhaps out of nostalgia, but this game offered some closure to a legendary franchise. Over 10 years, we wove in and out of the life of Atreus and his troubles, exploring various fantastical worlds as we went along. Perhaps there wasn't any real danger outside of a couple of times, but the excitement was there. The End of Ages answered any lingering questions we had, like why Yisha couldn't rebuild Dani, or why the Barrow were slaves, or... well, actually these weren't questions asked by Myst 4, or 1 through 3 for that matter. In fact, looking at the surface, there seems to be very little connection to the main franchise at all. What's the deal with that? Well, as most people watching this have either guessed or already knew, there is one more stop on our journey through the Myst games. 2, if you're being technical. There was in fact a spin-off called Uru, Ages Beyond Myst, which had a single-player and MMO component. The story behind why these two games are split is a little bit complicated, but I'll be visiting them before wrapping things up. They explain a lot of the events behind Myst 5, and make some connections to the main series that Myst 5 doesn't really explain. But for now, we've come to the close. This is as far as the timeline goes for the series, so this really is the last we ever see of Atreus. It's sad to see him go, but we've still got places to get stuck at. This time, you can bring a friend. Thanks for watching. Until next time.